Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar, and I'm pleased to welcome you to my podcast, The Practice of You. I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles, and I'm fascinated by lawyers who have brought joy and balance to their lives in a career that doesn't always make that easy. In each episode, I'll have a one-on-one conversation with a lawyer who excels professionally, but more importantly is committed to promoting their well-being. Whether athletic, creative, or mindful, there are dozens of ways that lawyers have achieved balance, and we're going to explore that together. You can find this show on all of our major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. And with that, let's start practicing. Welcome to The Practice of You. This is Jeff Sklar, and I'm here with Amber Busuttil Mullen. Amber, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Amber and I have been colleagues and friends for, I think, 11 years or so, and she's a fantastic executive compensation, employee benefits attorney, and I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks. It's fun.
And so maybe, Amber, we can start. Tell us a little bit about your firm, which will sound familiar to listeners because your partner, Justin Bowen, was also on toward the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I guess he's the one to beat, right?
Right. I have no doubt you will vastly exceed the bar he set.
Okay.
Tell us about the firm and your practice.
Sure. So my law firm's called Bowen Tax Law, and there's two components to what we do. We do general tax law. If anyone was around for the second episode of Practice of You, they met Justin Bowen, my partner, and I head up our executive compensation practice. So what that means is I help executives with their compensation issues, and mostly what people hire me for is when there are complicated situations involving equity ownership that executives have in their companies, and they're being bought or sold.
Right, and we work together a lot when we represent executives that are either entering into compensation packages or maybe getting out of them.
That's right.
So, but today we're here to talk about your love of the outdoors, which is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to getting into this. What I learned today, though, is that you didn't always love the outdoors. That's something newer since you moved to Idaho a few years ago, but maybe you can take us to the beginning of your love for the outdoors, and in particular, your ownership with your partner of Steelhead Lodge,
Yep.
which is a fishing lodge.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, so you are not only a tax lawyer, but the proud partner in a fishing lodge.
That's right. So if the tax law thing doesn't work out for me,
There's always fish.
there's always fish, and the hotel mogul that I am.
There you go. Well, I've seen the pictures and it's beautiful. So
Thank
maybe
you.
Start us at the beginning.
Sure. So I wouldn't say that I didn't love the outdoors, but I didn't have that immersive exposure to it growing up. I was a city slicker, more or less. I grew up just, 2 miles from this recording studio that we're in. We did, though, have a place in Idaho, my family did, and we went there primarily for skiing. We spent time there in the winters, not so much in the summers. And then fast forward to 10 years ago, just around the time that you and I met, moved to Idaho, and I think I told you that it's like when in Rome, you just kind of have so much opportunity to explore new things that become suddenly in your backyard. It's just all around you when you live somewhere that's outside of the city.
Yeah. So you moved to Idaho well before COVID. So well before it was cool to go move someplace like Idaho, or I have my place in northern Michigan. Maybe talk for a minute about what led you to want to make a change and leave the city slicker life, as you said, and go to something a bit different.
Sure. Yeah. And everyone says, "Oh, did you move during COVID?" I said, "No, it was actually a couple of years before that." I have to be honest, it really had a lot to do with raising my kids and practicing law. This podcast is about balancing a pretty heavy-duty professional career with other things that are important in life, and spending time mainly on the roads and in traffic and paying a nanny when I'm not, able to be sitting in traffic, doing work, not billing clients, but also not being with the kids. And my best friend had moved to Idaho 2 years prior, and I kind of copycatted her. I was like, I know Idaho. We've been there. I've been going there. Let's give this a whirl. And fast forward now, 10 years, suddenly, blink of an eye. I can't believe it's been so long. But basically, my family's more or less grown up there.
And you've maintained your law practice here in LA. Well, you really have a nationwide practice. You guys work with lots of clients, but predominantly California.
Right.
Nothing changed for you, even though you picked up and moved. Now, well, maybe it did change. I don't know. In terms of your work as a lawyer, what changed?
Nothing changed in my work as a lawyer.
Yeah.
When I first moved, I was very reluctant to reveal where I was. You know, I thought I just didn't know how it would come across. Again, this was pre-COVID. Now it's sort of like everyone lives where they want, and it has become kind of trendy to move different places. And I would really not put that, you know, first and foremost in any way. I have a 310 area code still on my phone. The practice is based out of California. We're practicing federal law. It doesn't have anything to do with Idaho. And I just thought it might seem a little bit, I don't know if frivolous is the right word, but just
like
kind of
serious?
like less serious. You know, you're not in Century City or you're not downtown.
Yeah.
And then I began to find, little by little over time, people would discover that I was living in Idaho, and that's all they wanted to talk about.
Right.
How did you move to Idaho? How did you do it? Why did you do it? You know,
Sort of like something that made a jailbreak.
I mean, it really, I mean, people kind of acted like it was a jailbreak. And then just realizing that people, number one, didn't care, and if anything, were maybe even interested or.
What's interesting?
You know, so now I don't try and hide it necessarily. I don't think I promote it. Other than, I guess, we're doing this podcast, but that was you asking me.
Everybody in the world could know.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't try and hide it anymore, and I don't think that it's impacted my my practice. I still have great clients all over the world. I think people are really used to working with professionals in different geographies.
Yeah, and as transactional lawyers, it's especially, or at least easier, to do work from someplace else.
You don't go to court.
Right.
You know.
Exactly. So you moved to Idaho, went in Rome. So what was going on in Rome? What were you doing in Idaho? You get there and you say, okay, now I'm going to get into what?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that we really started doing was camping all the time. And you and I have just kind of joked before we started recording that, you know, you get the house in Michigan or you move to Idaho, and then suddenly what's the next thing that follows? It's all the stuff. It's all the gear.
All the stuff.
So we started spending a lot of weekends out in the public lands and camping and kind of going further afield and trying different places. But I mean, I want to be clear. We're not talking like remote backpacking or anything. It's not quite that hardcore. But just to have that experience so accessible that you can dip out on a weekend without too much planning and, you know, throw your stuff in and go check out somewhere that's not in cell phone service and spend a little time by yourself and with your thoughts and off your phone. It was a great experience.
So these were not campgrounds where there's like 50 people in a row and a little stick that says your number for the lot, or are they like that? Or
no,
because I have an impression that I like to think that I'm somewhat of an outdoors person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you've got me beat. I have an impression that you go further in than I've gone.
Look, it's funny because there's all sorts. It's not just the monolithic. You know, camping's like one thing or another. There's different types of camping. I think I'm probably on the less, maybe a little bit more adventurous than you. I don't know. But, I mean, it's Idaho. There's people who go way the heck out and do all sorts of crazy things.
Right.
So
like a TV show.
Yeah, exactly. Like straight wilderness.
Yeah.
But for someone growing up in LA to be a couple hours out and, you know, finding a spot to sort of throw the tent down and then graduated to the little tiny RV and then pull that in.
Have an RV?
Yeah, I should send you a picture of it.
That's
cute.
Really cool. Yeah, I mean, I try going camping spur of the moment in Los Angeles. You need to book like a year out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this isn't that.
Don't plan anything.
This is not booking a spot. You know, that you just kind of there's some designated spots and you can go find them, but it's not what you're thinking of with you get a reservation and a number.
Take us fast forward to Steelhead Lodge and how you became a fish magnate.
When I really dove in head first to the Idaho thing. Yeah, so I had been to the Steelhead Lodge, and it's just on this beautiful bank of the Salmon River. And I had the first time I went there, I had this really strange just feeling, and I was like, I think I want to own this someday. I mean, what a weird thing to think, right? You don't normally kind of say that as you're just going as a guest to stay somewhere. And then I don't even think I told you this part, but I took my kids back there, I don't know, let's call it a year later. And I said, I want to show you this place. And we pull up in front, and lo and behold, there's all these flags out, and they're having an auction. And they were auctioning off the contents of the lodge and the property itself.
Oh, wow.
The owners were selling it.
Fluke?
This was a fluke. This was a total fluke. And I get a paddle, and my kids are like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, you're not like this spontaneous.
Yeah.
And I chickened out, and I didn't bid on it. And I thought about it for years. I was like, what if I had bid on the Steelhead Lodge?
Wow.
And
so that was not the moment of acquisition.
That's not the moment of acquisition. No, that was not it.
You need destiny to like hit you in the face.
It was destiny. It didn't come along till later. We did a river rafting trip with some other families, including my oldest childhood friend from Los Angeles, from kindergarten. And this would have been summer 2021. And we were river rafting in that area on a multi-day trip. And I said, I want you guys to check out this place, Steelhead Lodge. And then we bought it. It was still for sale. It had never sold. No, it had never sold at the auction.
It was meant for you guys.
It was totally meant for us.
So what type of condition was it in when you bought it?
Oh, I don't know that I want to say, because what if the prior owners are listening?
What type of condition? What I saw on the website is something that looks very new.
Yeah.
Very beautifully designed.
We renovated it top to bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a lot
Which was no small task, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's not that easy to find people to come in and do something.
There's no Home Depot down the street.
There's no Home Depot down the street. No, there's no Home Depot down the street.
Yeah.
It was kind of old. Yeah. The couple who had been running it were getting on in years. I think that they weren't quite able to care for it so well, which is why they had been selling it. And I have to give the aesthetic vision credit to my business partner, Darcy, my childhood friend.
Good. Yeah.
She knew what she wanted it to look like. And then I kept being like, ooh, do we want to bring in this or that? She's like, nope. You're the operations. I'm the renovation.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. Exactly. So you've seen the website, what it looks like now. Yeah. The people listening to the podcast, I'm assuming, will get a link and go check it out if they're interested.
Say what the website is. Go ahead.
Oh, it's steelheadlucile.com. Lucile. That's a little town of God knows how few people. It's not even really a town that it's in. Steelhead Lucile. Right. It's in Lucile, Idaho.
So I just want to drill down a little bit on this. That's not a small decision. I mean, I don't know what the dollars were, but that's not a small decision to say, okay, we're going to buy this lodge. And this isn't like buying a house. Okay, we'll own this house and we'll kind of share it and no big deal. This is a business.
Yes.
So tell me about that thought process and how quickly or not you came to the decision.
We came to it very quickly.
Wow.
Probably more quickly than maybe we should have, considering. I don't want to say that because this all worked out in the end, but it was a big decision, and it is a business. And as it's funny because in my professional life, I do really specific. My field is so specific and so focused, and I've been doing it for such a long time, and I know it so well. And this was something that I dove into with like zero experience.
Right.
So yeah, the first weekend that we closed on the sale, we had all of our friends all teed up to go. It was a kind of a special event weekend in the area. They were having these jet boat races. And so we had all the friends going. I think that we closed the sale on the day that we arrived with all of our friends, and we hadn't realized that we didn't really look over the calendar and whether they had guests already staying there. So we arrived and these people are there waiting to check in, and we didn't have a credit card machine. And I'm like taking cash and making up prices and taking personal checks and telling my friends, I'm like, you guys got to bunk in together because this guy's got the room. Wow. So no, it was definitely just into the fire. And I don't know, we figured it out over time. We finally have it really down now. We have a great couple that manages the property and lives on it.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so I am still a full-time lawyer in case you were wondering about running a hotel on the side. No, we've got some people who live there, but and it's just we've had a few iterations of trial and error, and some things going right and some things not. And I feel like this summer we are off to the races.
So you are a partner in two businesses that are very different.
Yes.
So I guess you've answered to some extent the question of how do you have the time to manage with the lodge, because you've got some on-site operators that takes a little bit of pressure off. Although I imagine in 2021 and 22, when you were bringing it up to the standard that you wanted, I bet you must have been pouring a lot of time into it.
More than I anticipated. I mean, I definitely, I canceled a trip to Mexico for a friend's 50th birthday when our manager left on and it was actually jet boat weekend the following year, like big event weekend. The lodge was sold out, and the manager left.
Left.
Like left.
Oh, yeah.
And
no 2 weeks notice.
No 2 weeks notice. Canceled a trip to Mexico and was checking people in, and I cleaned some rooms.
Yeah.
You just kind of got to dig
Service
in and
business.
keep it going. Service business. Yeah. It's all about having trusted people to run it. And this couple we've got now is just fantastic. I can kind of rest easy that it's in capable sets of hands, and then I get a chance to go up there and really enjoy it. Like I was up there last week.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
They're so different, these two things. How do you sort of reconcile them in your mind, or do you feel a pull toward one or to the other, or has it somehow settled in and they coexist in your life pretty easily?
Well, I think it's, kind of what I mentioned before, this being something that's so out of my regular bailiwick. Yeah. It just really makes it this fun adventure that's happening. And after all of the work to get it going and the work to renovate it and the work to figure it out, and it's crossed my mind a lot of times, like, oh God, should I have just never done this? Like, and then every time I come back to, no, I'm so glad that I did this.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I have this in my life. Even, for however long we keep it and for however long we have it, like, I'm glad that I did it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it and you're there, how do you feel when you're out there?
Oh, I feel so proud.
Yeah.
I feel so proud. I'm like, this is really cool. Here's this tax lawyer who grew up in Los Angeles, and now I got a fishing lodge in Idaho. Who would have thought?
That's so cool. And it's beautiful because there's mountains there too, right? So you've got mountains, and then you've got this big, wide river. And
it's in a big canyon.
Yeah, it looked like you're sort of on a bend.
Yes. Yeah.
And so do you use the river? Is it fast? I've got a little bit of river experience from my northern Michigan times, but also I've done the Kern River here, which is pretty intense.
Yeah, it is.
I got maimed. I got really hurt on the Kern River. But that's another story. So how often do you use the river, and what do you do out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things you can do on the river. Whitewater rafting is huge there. Basically, the town that that the lodge is adjacent to is one of the main takeout points for kind of famous multi-day rafting trips in Idaho. So you can either take out there that are upriver from us, or you can do some smaller trips, couple of days, even day stretches, and sort of even float past where the lodge is. And then the lodge is named after the steelhead fish, which is a type of fish that, goes and then goes out to the ocean, and then it comes back to its spawning grounds in the rivers. So it goes freshwater to saltwater and comes back again.
Oh, no
called
kidding.
Steelhead, and it's one of the most famous areas for fishing steelhead. So you can do that out of a boat. You can do that standing on the banks, the rivers. I mean, there's all sorts of sportsmen who use the river and sportswomen.
And so, yeah, so do you take like kayaks out there, boats? Do you fish out there, or are you more of a side of the river person?
I love to be on the river. I'm trying to learn to row. I'm okay at rowing. I'm
Rowing
okay.
what kind of vessel?
Rowing a drift boat.
Right. That I actually just learned what a drift boat was. You can explain that.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning before we started recording, a drift boat's a kind of boat that's popular in Idaho and Wyoming and Washington and those environs, and you fish out of it. Here's the funny thing. I actually won my drift boat in a sweepstakes.
Of course you did. Right?
I was
Isn't that how everybody gets a drift boat?
meant to be, right? I
yeah.
threw a card into sweepstakes and I got a drift boat.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you get out there on the river and you now I guess once you're downriver you have to have somebody pick you up at the boat and drive you back.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the thing about rivers. They're sort of a one-way street.
They are a one-way street. Yeah, they are a one-way street. So I think that, again, it's kind of for people who really like to be on a river, there's not just one way to enjoy it. Like fishing, I like fishing, okay.
Yeah.
But I really like to be out there. I like to be in a boat, working on learning the rowing. And
that's pretty cool.
Catching fish is pretty fun too.
And do you, it's pretty good eating fish out of there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine you guys have had some pretty awesome family dinners up there.
That's right.
And you sometimes have your extended family up there,
we had
too?
a huge Thanksgiving up there this past year.
Wow.
Yep. Parents, grandparents, kids. So we had, I guess, 3 generations. 4 families, 3 generations.
And you have like outdoor cooking area, too. I saw that. I mean, it really looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you work from up there, or when you go there, is that a no-tax zone?
No, it's not a no-tax zone. There is no tax zone. I mean, that's the life of a lawyer,
that's
right?
Being a deal lawyer, yeah.
No, there is a tax zone, and actually, it's not out of range. We have Wi-Fi, and we have it's kind of this weird. What we have is space, not SpaceX. What's it called? Elon Musk. Yeah. For rural areas, for rural satellite internet. He's got a satellite up there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So no, I will definitely do work from there. In fact, I was on a Zoom, kind of a last minute Zoom call, and at the end of it, it was a client pitch, and the guy said, "Where are you anyways?"
Yeah. Why did they even think to ask
Just because
that?
the background didn't look like an office,
Right. But it could have been one of those fake Zoom backgrounds, but yours was real.
Yes, mine was real.
And what was it, the river?
It was actually the inside of the, there's a house on the lodge property, and it's all decorated with these antique fishing creels, hung all over the wall.
That's so cool.
So it's this whole display of antique fishing creels, which I don't think is one of the Zoom backgrounds.
I'm sure not that one.
Yeah.
I've done conference calls for my kayak before, but that's
really
not with clients.
Don't drop your phone.
Networking me, that's actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of tuck it in my life preserver.
Yeah.
But I would attend networking meetings sometimes because I go to Michigan during the summer and I'd get out on a kayak and sometimes I'm just out there and I would just dial in and people would sort of hear slosh.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? And
what do you say?
Click on the video. Say I'm in Lake Michigan.
Oh, really? Okay.
Listen, this is what makes us.
Yeah,
us.
I love that you go out to Michigan.
Yeah. It becomes part of your personality. It's who you are, and there's a peace that I get when I'm out there. That's very. And it's not to say I don't love L.A. Right? I really do like Los Angeles and the hills, and it's a lot to offer. But when I'm in my house up north, that's what we call it in Michigan, up north.
Yep.
It's pretty great. It's pretty peaceful.
Well, and you have your routine now, right? You've kind of really carved out the summers to spend time there.
Yeah,
I think
with
it's
our family and the kids, and the kids have friends come out, and I think for me it's been an important thing to do. And it sounds like you've done something really similar. Although I'm not running a business really out of mine, so you've added another element. You're that's good though. Revenue producing. So
well, at some point.
It's pretty great. You're also a big skier. Are you snowboarder or skier?
No, I ski.
Yeah. So So you're like all year long, you're enjoying the outdoors, it sounds like.
Yeah. My real love in the winter has become cross-country skiing.
Oh, that's really good for you, right?
Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely some exercise for sure, but it's a little bit more solitary, and I like getting out in the woods. We have beautiful trails. It's so quiet, and I'll go at lunchtime, and I'll sometimes, speaking of, do you take tax law with you or not?
Yeah.
I will not infrequently solve issues in my mind when I get out of the office. I'll be mulling them over and turning them around different ways and trying to think, like, how should I look at this? How can I make this work for the client? And it'll come to me on the trail when I have some peace and distance outside from the office, and I'll
That's interesting.
come back and put it into action.
It's something different than maybe all the guests I've had so far, because pretty much everybody has talked about when they do their thing, whether it's surfing or mountain biking or whatever their thing is, that they're really deeply focused on that particular activity, and they really don't think about work. And in fact, some people said, and if I do start thinking about work, then I'm just going to sort of not do that thing. You're the opposite.
Yeah, I'm not that compartmentalized.
You're not compartmentalizing. No. You're sort of saying, hey, no, that's a quiet space where I can let things bubble up and see if I can noodle something.
I think about work all the time. It's really, I've listened to some of your other guests, and I think that, some people kind of feel, or I've had the sense from the interviews that they feel like maybe their true persona is doing the other thing and work is separate or second, or I don't want to say come second, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it's quite distinct. For me, I think if someone said, what's the biggest part of your persona? I think it's being a lawyer. Yeah. For me, I mean, that's really important. And I do take my work outside the office with me, but it doesn't bother me or bring me down.
Right.
I mean, it's just kind of going on and processing. And
well, that's the thing. I mean, I think everyone wrestles with how to engage with the job we have as lawyers, right? And everybody's different. And some people need to have a clean break between, okay, I am now entering the water and I'm not going to think about work. And that's one way to do it. Or in your case, it's, it's just part of you.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's just part of you.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't feel that it, infringes on my outside of office time. I'm not saying I spend every second of the day thinking about tax law.
I mean, that sounds awesome. I mean, right?
No, actually, I do. Right. But it doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it. Just to stick with the example of Nordic skiing, I could be way the heck out on some trail somewhere, and I don't feel like it ruins my experience if I'm mulling something work-related over in my head.
Yeah, it's not invading your space.
It's just a gorgeous place to do my thinking.
That's a really healthy way to engage with work. I'm not sure I can do that. And but that's really good that you can do that.
I think everyone has their method.
Yeah. I think, because when I'm going to ponder something, I think I deliberately say, this is a time I'm now going to be in my pondering mode. And I'll go sit wherever I'm going to sit, in the backyard or wherever, and think about something. But I'm not thinking about it when I'm swimming in the water or, doing that. My mind sort of just goes into a blank mode.
Well, you've gotten into mindfulness, right?
But it's always done that. It's done that since I was 15 years old. I mean, even when I was very, very young, competitive swimmer, I don't know what it was. It's just, there's something to do with the breathing and the repetition that it really takes your consciousness down. It's very similar to like a mindfulness thing. So maybe that's why, or maybe I just try not to think about work when I'm doing it. I don't know.
I'm just not that zen.
Now, well, you know what?
At all.
But you're doing something right because you got a whole lodge and a mountain and a river.
I'm the opposite of zen.
Yeah. So what do your kids think about it out there?
They have come to like it.
Yeah.
I'd even say
they've come to
I would
like
even
it.
say that they've come to love it. Yeah, they thought it was a little bit out there at first. You know, I think that they worried, oh, is mom going to be like off at the lodge? Is she going to be out in this remote place? Is it going to, you know, take her away? And when I went up there last week, both my kids, in fact, were like, oh, we can't wait to get back to the lodge. Yeah, they've come around.
So now it's part of their lives.
Yeah.
And they dig it.
Yeah, they do dig it.
But it's interesting. They had reservations. Understandable, right? It's almost like when another little sibling is born, you're like, uh-oh. This kid's going to get all the attention.
Right.
This lodge is going to get all the attention.
Like I said, it was a little bit out of the blue. You know, it wasn't kind of like, oh, and the next natural progression is fishing lodge. No, It was a little out of the blue. So I think that they kind of, and especially after the almost auction.
I think mom's losing it.
After the almost auction purchase, they wanted to make sure I wasn't losing it. Right. I can't say that I'm not losing it, but at least they've come to love the lodge.
That's really great. So in terms of, you've started to talk about it, the way you balance, it seems to come very naturally to you. And I know from working with you that when you're say away on vacation or something like that, though, you're very good, Justin is as well, at creating space for yourself and saying, okay, I'm out. I mean, I remember once you were on a river rafting trip, I think, with your family. Maybe that's
might have even been the one.
Yeah, I remember that river rafting trip because I think I needed you for something. I was like, well, there's not a chance in hell I'm going to find her. But that's a good thing, right?
Hopefully that's not
Life
the norm.
Goes on.
Normally you can find me.
But no, you're very available. But you are good, and Justin is very good at creating the space for yourself and for your family and saying, okay, for this 4 days or this whatever, I'm out. And that's hard for lawyers to do.
Yeah, and it was a long time coming. I mean, my sense is it was a long time coming for you too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when you grow up like I did and like you did in large blue chip international law firms, and you're young and you're starting out and you kind of don't know where to find your balance, and took a long time.
Yeah.
Took a long time.
Well, yeah, and you were in big law. That's where you got all your training, and you spend a lot, doing your work for private equity funds and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you think if you'd stayed in big law that you could have owned a fishing lodge?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter.
Because
exactly.
You do own a fishing law and you're not in big law. I think you could go back to big law, but you don't want to do that either.
I wouldn't at this point.
Yeah. No, you've built a really great life. I mean, you're sort of the example of what this show's about, right? Because you didn't start being a deep lover of the outdoors. It's something that you came to, and you came to it while you already had your law practice. You did not start out inheriting a fishing lodge on a beautiful piece of the earth over there in Idaho. You bought it, and you did that and fixed it up with your partner and family after you were already a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's sort of the point of why I'm doing these shows, is to highlight people that do things like that, because it's possible.
And it's possible at any stage.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it doesn't always feel possible to people that are practicing law, that are, inundated with work. And thank goodness it's great to be busy, right? We all want to be busy. That means we're doing well and that sort of thing. But certainly for me, that's not enough. Right. There's parts of my life that I want to have time outside and all of that. And you found a way to do that.
Yeah. I don't know how much it can be generalized, but I feel like a half generation younger than you and me, or maybe, a generation younger than you and me.
But they're better at it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's come up before.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I'm actually glad that it took me a while to get to this place. I'm glad that I had a period where I really, was I was about to say nose to the grindstone. I don't know that that's a great analogy, because I also don't want to sort of diminish how hard I work now, but it is different. You kind of put in that period of time where you don't feel that you have the bandwidth or the permission to kind of, flex your muscles in other areas of your life and carve out those spaces that you were referring to. I mean, I think that in our generation, it's very difficult to do that right out the starting gate. Very difficult. And I think that I'm a great lawyer for having had, a period where I really maybe didn't have the opportunity to do that, because there were certain things I learned in that period. And then I got further along, and I had the courage to know that I could, branch out a bit.
Yeah. Well, there's comfort in experience, right? When you're in your training mode, you're grinding, doing the big law thing, and that has a lot of value. And you may spend your whole career in big law, or you may leave at some point. But boy, is the training usually very good, and that's not going to be the moment where you're going to be jetting off left and right. Right. You're pretty occupied during those periods.
So maybe as I'm coming back to it, no, I can quite securely say I would not have wound up as the owner of a fishing lodge in big law.
But it's a great thing, and I think it's something I admire it.
Thank you.
And I think it's inspiring. And, along those lines, what would you say to other people listening that have some crazy idea that presents itself, their version of the fishing lodge, something that, like you said, when you first went there, you thought, wow, I want to own this one day. Why does that thought pop in your head? But it does. That means it spoke to you. Something about it.
Yeah.
And my daughter would say you manifested it, is what my daughter would call it.
That's the new terminology.
Yeah. Well, listen, she seems to make everything happen that she wants to have happen. So there might be something to it. But, you made that happen. So what advice would you give to other lawyers who are listening where it maybe doesn't seem so possible to fit something like that in or do something?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're using my situation as an example, it didn't happen right away. It happened at its own time, but it's something that I kept coming back to, and I think that is an indicator. If you keep coming back to something, even over a multi-year period, it's something you really want to do for whatever reason, crazy, not crazy, off the beaten path or not. But if you keep coming back to it, you should try and find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And again, it hasn't been totally smooth sailing all along. And there have been those moments, as I already mentioned, where I thought, oh, gee, what have I gotten myself into? I would not trade it. I absolutely would not trade it. I don't care how many tough spots there were. I'm so happy that it's something that I have in my life, that I did it. I would have been constantly thinking about it. So if you have that thing that's always in the back of your brain, it's there for a reason.
That's a great note to probably end it on. I mean, the inspiration that you provide is really great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for joining.
Oh, it was great to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you asking me.
Do it again.
Yes. We'll have to have our next chat up at the lodge.
Right. That would be amazing.
Yes.
I'm going to take you up on that.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on The Practice of You, hosted by me, Jeff Sklar. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. I really appreciate your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others. Until next time, enjoy the present moment and don't forget to practice you. This podcast is considered attorney advertising by the California State Bar. The discussions in this podcast do not constitute professional advice of any kind, including without limitation medical, legal, or business. And you are advised to consult with your own physicians, lawyers, and other advisors before undertaking any activities discussed in this podcast.